Welcome classic rock fans to a very metal themed video where I discuss a lot of those albums that I used to listen to way back in the 1980s. So I'm avoiding all the obvious ones, you know, your AC/DCs, Motorhead, Iron Maiden, to dust off a few old relics at the bottom of the closet. Also, many of you have taken issue with my definition of metal. I did a video, 10 best heavy metal albums. A lot of you pointed out that you didn't think many of them actually were heavy metal. But you've got to remember, when I was a kid way back in the dark ages, that heavy metal tended to just be a loud electric guitar and long hair. I remember Status Quo being discussed within the context of a conversation on heavy metal many years ago. That's how vague it all was back then. But it's all branched off into numerous metallic tributaries, I think, since bands like Metallica came to the Rose to the Fore in the 1980s. It was then that I became very aware of the term thrash metal entering the lexicon. Even a band like Black Sabbath, that are seen as the progenitors of doom metal. But I could be wrong, and I admit that this is out of my comfort zone. Really, I should read more Martin Popoff, really, but now I'm pretty sure even that doom metal applied to Black Sabbath was something that was applied retrospectively. I don't remember them being called as such as in the 70s or early 80s. So in a nutshell, I ask for your forgiveness if my definition of metal just isn't nuanced enough for you. Anyway, enough of this flim-flam, let's get on with it, shall we? The first one on my list is Lee Aaron's Metal Queen. I remember as a kid watching ECT, I think it was called ECT, it used to be on Channel 4, or was it BBC 2, I can't quite remember. But I was blown away when she was on there. She kind of upped the quality of that show, especially for that episode. And she played Hot to Be Rocked and Line of Fire, I think, were the two songs she did. I was actually mesmerised by her. Of course, she was actually stunning to look at. Imagine my surprise when the very next day, I think it was the very next day, Saturday, at the Reading Hexagon, I went to see Hawkwind in concert 1985. And guess who would roll out on that stage as a support act? Of course, she rose to fame with her first album, I think it was just called the Lee Aaron Project. She also did that notorious photo shoot for Oui, a French magazine, which she posed topless, which she later believed actually harmed and damaged her career. And Metal Queen is quite an abrasive sound to it. Her sound softened as she went on. The 1987 album she did had keyboards as a prominent feature, and some 1980s production tropes were very much apparent. I saw her at Reading Rock in 1987 as well. But Metal Queen wasn't just an album, it became a moniker to a certain extent, and it was an album that secured her a deal with Attic Records as well. So it's one that I think even to this day, she's gone all jazzy, more experimental on us. She still actually pulls out and performs. Helix, No Rest for the Wicked, 1983, I think that one came out. No, I don't remember when I was first introduced to this band. I think they were a Canadian band as well. Do correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I first saw this band, it was some sort of Saturday night, Saturday evening music show, and they played this video, Heavy Metal Love, which the band have, I think, suggested as a kind of a homage or ode to Joan Jett. And that was certainly an arresting video, not just because the woman flexing her biceps and God knows what else in the video, but also that very arresting and powerful guitar riff. I went out and bought it. I went to Shades in London, a little shop that dealt primarily with hard rock and heavy metal, and used to have a great line in vinyl bootlegs in the back, one of the back rooms as well. I used to get a few Kiss bootlegs from them. But I used to love this album. There was a song on there called White Lace Black Leather, and the opening track as well, I can't remember what it was. It's been years since I've heard this album. It's probably out of print now anyway. But I'd kind of love a copy of it on CD if it was available. And this album has a wonderful, wonderful cover as well. I just love the artwork. The song Heavy Metal Love was actually featured, I think, for the wedding scene in the Trailer Park Boys movie. But I often wonder how this album would sound to me now if I heard it. Very much a part of that early metal scene in the 80s. Don't Get Mad, Get Even, Dirty Dog, two great songs on this record. I absolutely loved it. And of course they went on to do that Give Me Some Loving? I can't remember the title of the track, but I know it had Tracy Lords in the video, which certainly recommended it to a young 16-year-old boy. Next one is Demon and Night of the Demon from 1981. Man, I love this album. I used to work, as soon as I left school, I used to work for an employment agency where they just ferry you off to God knows what factories for a pittance, really. But a great guy used to drive the van, and he used to play this album all the time. It was an album that I immediately sort of fell in love with. I mean, one hell of a night. I mean, what an anthemic number. If my memory serves me right, and it often doesn't, this album opens with Full Moon, quite an eerie number. But this album is full of that metallic chug that very much defined the new wave of British heavy metal. Nevertheless, it's full of melodies and hooks that makes this a thoroughly enjoyable listening experience. Lots of wonderful lyrics about demons, debauchery, sex, and everything a growing lad needs, really. Great anthemic guitar work and fills, and some wonderful sort of metal vocals as well. Next one is Wasted and their album Vices from 1983, I believe. Was this their first album? I'm not sure, I can't remember, but I know it included Pete Way, who I had an awful lot of respect for. He was a remarkable player, I think much undersung bassist as well, who was sadly missed, I think. But this album, I don't know if you can actually call it metal as such. It's one of those slippery albums for me that seems to occupy or operate within paradigms of sort of sleazy rock than metal. But nevertheless, it's one I remember thoroughly enjoying back in the day. It seems to be a kind of album that bridges the kind of hard rock of the 70s and the burgeoning metal scene of the 80s. But I love the overall murky feel of this music, almost subterranean. And just imagine yourself in some sort of sweaty, smoky barroom somewhere with the cranked up guitars and thudding drums of it all. Mick Glossop's production as well helped this album. It has a very authentic feel to it. And right from the start is a bluesy, faces-like vibe. This album has one foot firmly placed in the studded metal of the 1980s, but also rather cannily looking back on the rather stained and besmirched genes of 1970s rock and roll. Madam X, We Reserve the Right from 1984. This is one of those embarrassing admissions to actually enjoying this album. But I was only 16, my lad, when this came out. Again, this is one of those bands I saw on ECT. And if you saw them, they certainly left you with an impression, rather drawing from the dark anthemic leathers of the 80s metal scene, certainly the British metal scene. They hailed from a more glamorous place, I think. Wouldn't have been out of place sticking them up there with the bands like The Sweet and the Alice Cooper Band. But I really enjoyed it. I loved that song, We're High in High School. Its bratty vocals, very Alice Cooper-esque, I think. I think if I'm honest with you, at the time when I saw them, I probably just liked the women's costumes. What was there not to like? And of course you could say things like that in those days without being attacked by the pestiferous horde of the Twitterati. I saw the Scorpions around about this time. No, it wasn't. I saw the Scorpions at Nebworth in 85, but I saw them a bit later because I loved the Scorpions in the 80s as well. Anyway, I went to see the Scorpions on their Savage Amusement tour. I think it was Hammersmith Odeon. They were supported by a band called Vixen. Now, I'm pretty sure Vixen are associated with this band. I'm sure there's some personnel swapping there. I do think this band's ECT performance sounded better than the album. The album seemed a little bit tinny and over-processed to me. But this was a band that were formed in Detroit, Michigan, so I don't know if any of them at all played any part in the wonderful last Alice Cooper album, Detroit Stories. Crocus, Headhunter from 1983. Man, I love this album. A band that is often overlooked, I think, these days in any kind of metal list. But this record, I love the live album they did as well. I can't remember what it was called. That came out about 86. That was a great record. This band hail from Sweden, I think they do, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure they hail from Sweden. Was it Switzerland? I always get the two mixed up. One's Volvos, one's chocolate, isn't it? The track Headhunter is a blistering number. I think high-octane heavy metal. I hate that phrase, high-octane heavy metal. It's one of those overused dead metaphors now. But it's certainly got this strut and swagger to it, as well as some majestic elements as well, which belies this band's prog influences, like the Scorpions, who are also quite proggy influenced way back in the day. And Screaming the Night is a great example of their more ambitious leanings, I guess. White Dinner has an anthemic chorus, and Russian Winter, which closes the album, I think, if I remember, has an almost Maiden-esque gallop to it. I must go away and listen to these albums again. I wonder if I just feel they were awful, or I wonder if they've stood the test of time. And on this album, of course, I had the track Ready to Burn, which had guest vocals by metal god himself, Rob Halford. Let's not forget the track Screaming in the Night is quite a famous one, which often turns up on late night radio shows. Headhunter is the only Crocus album to feature Steve Pace on drums, and it also includes the Buckman Turner Overdrive cover Stayed Awake All Night. So there you are, that's my list of metal albums that I used to listen to. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have watched to this point in the video, I thank you very much for doing just that, and urge you to click like, subscribe and check that notification bell so you don't miss anything. So I'll leave you with my closing salvo, which, as you know, is hope you're well, staying safe, but more importantly, of course, is that you keep listening.